Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this very interesting edition. I'm tempted to say today's edition is going to be very sexy. I've never used that phrase for any of our webinars before, but as you can see, the topic is prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, the critical role of HR professional. Tonight, we have the privilege of having someone who is not a first-timer on this prestigious platform, one of our very own key member of the HR mentorship family, Tochukwu Emeka Ume. And I would like to read his profile that is also showing on our screen right now. Tochukwu is a seasoned HR professional with a robust academic and career background in business administration and human resource management. He holds a bachelor's degree in business administration in management from the University of Maiduguri and a master's degree in business administration from the American University of Nigeria, ULA. Tochukwu's dedication to a professional excellence is evident through his affiliation with esteemed organization. He's a graduate member of the Nigerian Institute of Management, NIM, an associate member of the Nigerian Institute of Training and Development, NITAD, and an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM. He also holds a professional certificate in human resource management and a professional license as an HR practitioner, HRPL from CIPM, along with numerous other professional relevant certifications. Tochukwu began his professional journey as an HR administrative assistant at Forward in Action for Education, Poverty and Malnutrition in Bauchi State, where he gained invaluable experience. He then joined the International Committee of the Red Cross, RCRC, where he steadily advanced to the position of Delegation Learning and Development responsible within the HR team at RCRC Nigeria. He's a passionate advocate for safe and respectful workplaces. Tochukwu promotes inclusivity and fair treatment for all stakeholders, especially, the most vulnerable groups. With a diverse academic background, as mentioned, he is very versatile in business analytics, HR analytics, capacity development. Tochukwu is a highly competent, focus-driven capacity development specialist, as you will see shortly. He also serves currently as the Assistant Secretary. He role doubles as the Public Relations Officer for the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Abuja branch, contributing significantly to the development and growth of individuals and organizations. For a very sexy presentation, please let's welcome Tochukwu Emeka Ume. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you so very much, my mentor. It's an honor to be here. Good evening, everyone, senior colleagues who are on the call tonight. I appreciate the time you took out from your busy schedule to be here, and I appreciate everyone who made the time out to be here. I'm looking forward to learning from us as well, so I will do the little I can to present a little bit or a little information that I know and set the ball rolling for us to learn from one another. Thank you so very much, my mentor, for the privilege, for the opportunity, for the mentorship you've given to me and over 6,000 people like me across the nation, Nigeria, and even globally. We do not take this opportunity for granted. Thank you so very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, like you have heard, the topic we discussed, we are going to be discussing today will be prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. And our learning objective basically will focus on equipping every one of us with the right knowledge and the tools that are necessary to help us effectively as individuals, as HR professionals, to prevent and, more importantly, address sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in everywhere we find ourselves working as professionals. Then, to achieve this, we'll be going through some contents. Very briefly, we'll look at about 10 of those. Don't worry about the number. It wouldn't even take us so much time. So we'll try to do this in the next 40 minutes, 50 minutes max, hopefully. And we'll look at the introduction of the concept, and then we'll talk about the ideal workplace, look at some key terms, then consider the dangers of say in the workplace, and then we look at some numbers, then the legal framework that guides the discussion we're going to be having tonight, and then the specific role that we need to play in preventing sexual exploitation and abuse and harassment. We'll consider some case studies and then look at some reflections, and it will be a wrap for the evening. Thank you so very much once again for joining. And to make it easy for us to communicate, there will be times when I will ask you to engage in between the sessions. Please feel free to do so. You will find the chats box to use if you have questions in between the discussion. There will be time for us to take questions. However, if you have any question you don't want to forget, please make sure to drop it on the chat box. We'll be taking note of them to make sure that every question is addressed. And we largely encourage everyone to weigh in, share your thoughts and ideas, but please wait for the time to do so when we prompt you to do the needful. Thank you so very much for paying attention to these few details. So as introduction, the sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, we know can occur anywhere, both in the public or the private organizations. And unfortunately, the biggest challenge we've had so far as professionals, or mostly in the professional realm, is how to quantify these events, these happenings, these issues. How do we manage? How do we count it? Because of, especially most times people are afraid, of retaliation because of social stigma, lack of knowledge on how to report it. Other times, even lack of proper process of reporting these issues. Most of the time, these things happen under our noses, and then we ignore it. We don't even take it into consideration. One of the biggest challenge that this has caused today is that there is almost that of data in Nigeria, for example, to ratify the ILO convention of Convention 190 that would spell out a very significant punishment for situations like this, but that of data. And this is one of the major reasons why I am motivated to be sharing this discussion, or anchoring this discussion amongst us, so that we can raise more awareness and begin to pay attention to happenings like this, possibly quantifying them so that we can be able to show significant data that this thing has become a menace in our working environment today. Now, I would encourage you to use the chat box very briefly. Tell me in one word, what is the ideal working place where you want to work? Just describe with one word. What is the ideal workplace you desire to have, where you want to work? How will it be? How would you describe the ideal workplace for you? So in just like 1-2 minutes, please, let's see what you have on the chat box. I will try to look through it. What is your ideal workplace? Yes, Emanuela says safe, of course. We desire to have a safe workplace, non-toxic, excellent, positive mindset, flexible. Flexible. This person doesn't want to spend transport. Okay. Safe workplace. Yes. Safe. Respected. Peaceful. Growth. Exactly. Growth. Yes. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. I see all your comments. Safe, respected, flexible, positive, non-toxic. Where I can breathe. Don't choke them. Don't choke them. Not at all. Yes, agile, harmonious, inclusive. Excellent, excellent, excellent comments, everyone. Thank you so very much. So why I ask this is because I want to reflect the kind of place. You see, I reflected some time ago that most times you leave your home. For some of us who maybe live in very busy cities, you leave your home maybe somewhere around 6 a.m., 7 a.m., hit the road to work. Eventually you get to work, you spend all day until maybe 4, 5, 6, depending on your working hour, and then you commute back to work. You realize that you spend so much more time at work than you even do with your loved ones, because by the time you get home, you're already exhausted. You maybe spend 1, 2, 3 hours with your loved ones. You're tired, you eat, you sleep, you spend more time sleeping, and then wake up tomorrow morning, the cycle continues, right? So you spend more time at work. And it is only ideal that that place where you take so much of your time, every other day, should be a place that gives you peace of mind, should be a place that is devoid of any form of toxicity, a place that is devoid of any form of, harassment, of any form of intimidation, fear, or any form of abuse of any kind. So this is the kind of place every one of us want to work, a place where your sanity is maintained and preserved. It is the kind of place where we want to work. And this is the kind of place where I also want to work, right? But then there are situations like sexual abuse and harassment and exploitation that could possibly creep into this working place and make it very, very toxic for us to work in. And I'm sure that is not what we want to achieve. And that is why we are having this conversation today. So let's continue the ride. Okay, let us look at some key terms in terms of definitions. I'll just spend very little time on this because I don't want to dwell so much on that technicalities. So by definition, sexual exploitation has been defined as any actual or attempted abuse of a position of vulnerability, differential power, or trust for sexual purposes, including but not limited to profiting monetarily, socially, politically from that sexual exploitation of another. Okay, so it involves, especially, the key word for me here is a position of vulnerability and differential power. Okay, because even the trust that people put on you is because you have gained that position in their minds or in their lives. Then the second keyword we'll be looking at is sexual abuse. It is the actual or threatened physical intrusion of a sexual nature, whether by force. It includes any form of physical or psychological harm inflicted upon another person in a sexual context. Then the third keyword is sexual harassment. This involves any unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that creates a hostile work environment. This can include unwelcome touching, offensive jokes, or sexually suggestive comments. I will try to shy away from most of the technicalities of it, because if we want to dwell in the technicality of all of these, then a whole lot of us will be pinching ourselves already. I know when we're talking about sexual harassment, you're already pinching yourself like, okay, unwelcome touching, offensive jokes, sexually suggestive comments. These are very dicey things. And if we want to explore it deeper, a lot of us would really need to check ourselves again. But then let's try to leave the technicalities and look at, looking at it holistically. I believe we all understand the key terms that we are looking at today. And by prevention of sexual exploitation, that is PCA, as I would want to term it, right, simply refers to the prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. In other words, it means to prevent and actively manage and mitigate the risks of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, and responding appropriately when it occurs. So the keywords: to prevent, to manage, to mitigate, and to respond. So today, our focus is mostly on prevention. Today, our focus is on prevention. So if we manage to prevent, of course, it's a local balance here that prevention is better than cure. I would prefer that we prevent it not happening at all than worrying about how to manage, how to mitigate, or perhaps how to respond. But our focus today will be on prevention. Thank you. So in other words, this means for us taking all reasonable actions to protect our customers, our community members, our staff members, and proactively reduce the risks of sexual exploitation and abuse and harassment and prevent these incidences from even happening. We're also talking about creating or strengthening ways in which concerns can be raised and to respond robustly to concerns and cases in a way which prioritizes the rights, dignity, and the needs of the victims or survivors. Now, what are the dangers of sexual exploitation and abuse in the workplace? Me and you already agreed that there are things, the kind of workplaces where we expect to work, right? There are places where it is safe, for us to be in. We are not afraid that our coworker will do something to us and, threaten our lives and all of those things. A place where it's not toxic, a place where is harmonious for us to be in, spending all those times that we need to spend while working. So there are some dangers that if we allow sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment to happen, some dangers are prevalent. One of them is psychological. Now, psychologically, it creates things like anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health issues, loss of self-esteem, trust issues, complex trauma, and even suicidal thoughts. Me and you would agree that people who have been victims of sexual exploitation or even abuse, or what we term generally as, RAPE, right? I wouldn't want to use those words, right? So it connotes that it has a far-reaching impact in the lives of these people. Some people never recover from it for life. It becomes a bane in their lives. Some go into it. I've had the privilege to meet one or two people that has opened up to me about certain situations of their life where they have been abused. And till today, as at the time they were talking to me, it was still a serious psychological issues in their lives. They found it difficult to unlive that experience. So you don't want to put your staff or your colleagues in that kind of situation where they have a dent that can be traced to your organization for the rest of their lives, where they can never, every time the name of your organization or company is mentioned, these people have negative feelings that, sends negative vibes off their spine. We don't want that to happen. So it has far-reaching psychological impact on people who eventually are victims of this bane that we're discussing today. Then another one could be physical. For some of people, we see issues about physical injuries. It happens. Chronic pain, stress-related illnesses, sleep disturbances. They will never have a good night rest because of that, except they are healed. Physically, like it takes a whole lot of time. For some people, a lifetime to recover from these things, right? For some, even they slide into substance abuse and addiction. These are some of the harmful effects that may result if sexual exploitation and abuse is allowed to permeate our workplaces, and we don't want that. More so, it may even impact performances. People begin to feel scared at work. They are not able to be themselves. They're not able to find expression. They're not able to even be productive enough. They begin to abscond from work for any small reason at all. They begin to get distracted, and people who are high performers suddenly are no longer able to perform to expected standards. We see situations where people lose motivation coming to work, especially where they cannot open up and talk about what has happened to them. The perpetrator is still there in their presence. They get to see the perpetrator every day, and they are afraid that it may happen again. Yet they don't want to lose their jobs because this is the only means of survival that they have at that time. It impacts performance. You see them begin to get like forgetful. You give them information or tasks to perform, and for one reason or the other, they are not able because their minds are not there. They lose focus at work. It affects their performance. And when it affects performance, invariably, it affects profitability of the organization. We all agree as HR professionals that one of the critical reasons why we are there is to ensure that our organization are meeting their main mandate, which mostly borders around cost reduction or profit maximization. So whatever we are doing in the HR, if it is not resulting directly or indirectly to these two major components, we are losing steam, right? And if we do not take care of these situations of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in the workplace, it will eventually affect profitability of the organization that we're working in by reputational damage. When people know that this organization, these kind of things are happening, of course you have a very wrong image of the organization out there in the public, and some organizations, especially those that are culturally highly sensitive, will shy away from patronizing that organization. Okay, there is potential loss of business. So some organizations will not deal with certain organizations if they know that that organization is widely known or prevalent with certain kinds of behaviors, that are promoting or encouraging sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, because they have especially things that have to do with partnerships with organizations that are maybe multinationals or serious organizations. They have almost a zero tolerance policy for sexual exploitation and abuse for even their partners. And they won't want to partner with your organization if these kind of things are happening. Investors will shy away from you. Customers may not even be safe. They will avoid the organization. And in fact, it's also may lead to litigations, which can be cost implicative for your organization, no matter how it is. Once you are in the social media or in the social media space with your organization having a bad name, you know how much damage it will do to your organizational image, that you spend a whole lot of money trying to correct, going to media. Buying spaces in the media houses these days is not a joke. For a 30 minutes publication that will happen, maybe 30 minutes is too much. I say 1 minute or 2 minutes publication that will happen over a space of 3 days or so, it's running into millions. For you to, send that message to tell people that no, we are not what people think we are, and all of those things, it costs millions. Why would we want our organization to spend all of that money trying to do damage control when we can prevent it from even happening in the first place? Ladies and gentlemen, let us have another look at some numbers that are prevalent when we are talking about sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Firstly, Stop Street Harassment is an organization. From their postulations, they said about 38% of women said that they have faced unwelcome sexual advances in the workplace. Unfortunately, women are mostly the soft target. They are mostly people at the vulnerable group, right? Of course, because of the nature of their build, the nature how God created women and all of those things. Unfortunately, women are mostly at the receiving end of these kinds of situations. And that is why we need to pay closer attention to these vulnerable groups and give them optimum protection. Okay, so according to Stop Street Harassment, 38% of women have experienced unwelcome sexual advances in the workplace. Another shocking statistics is one postulated by Stand to End Rape. According to them, they said about 91% of the perpetrators of this sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment are men who are either peers or senior colleagues. So we can see the people who are likely, and of course, if the perpetrators are men, that means about 91% of the victims are women. Maybe the other parts are children. We don't know. Okay. But this is shocking statistics. And these people who perpetrate these things are mostly people at the senior level or people that are at pair with these victims, people that they are most likely vulnerable with, people that they are very feeling free with. But then these are the people who eventually turn around to hurt them. Now, Solidarity Center, another organization, said that 44% of the supervisors or superiors 44% of these women said that their supervisors or superiors has ever said or done something that made them uneasy in the workplace. I'm sure that these figures may be the same thing with you. And despite all of these figures that we see now, unfortunately, according to UN, that these issues, occurrences of sexual exploitation and abuse is known to be heavily underreported. If every case has been reported, I am sure that the figures will be very alarming because it happens almost every other week. Me and you would attest to that. Now, let us play a little bit. Get on your keypad and tell me on the chat, cumulatively in your career so far, how many cases of sexual exploitation and abuse you have witnessed, handled, or maybe negotiated before. Maybe come to your knowledge, you knew about it directly or indirectly, one way or the other. How many cases have you ever had in your lifetime so far, as far as your career is concerned? Is it A, none, B, one, between 1 to 5, or C, more than 5 cases so far? Let me hear your thoughts on the comment box. I am trying to check. Okay, more than 5, 4, 1 to 5. Maybe 5. Wow. Majority of us are between 1 to 5, more than 5. Wow. Wow. It's really, really happening. Wow. Even bigger than we thought, yeah? Okay. Wow. Wow. Quite shocking. Just, I think only one person said none. Yeah. Okay. 2 people none. But majority of the respondents, yeah. Okay. Another person none. Okay. Yes. For those that said none, I'm happy for you. You don't want to witness this kind of cases, to be very honest. It always gets very, I don't know the word to use to describe it, but I pray you don't witness any of it. Okay, now, for most of us, we've witnessed it at some point or the other. The thing is, even one case, according to CAPSIA is an organization that is a common approach to protection from sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. According to them, that even one incident is one too many. We want a work environment where we have 0 occurrences of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Okay, even one case is one too many. Our focus is to have a 0 tolerance. Every organization should have 0 tolerance for sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. It shouldn't happen at all. Why is that so? We have a legal framework, both locally and internationally. We have our laws that, outlaws this kind of behaviors. We don't want to get into the legal framework. I'm not a legal luminary, so I wouldn't go into all the nooks and crannies, but the point I'm trying to make from here is both locally and internationally, there are laws that prohibit sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. And the world of work takes very stern approach when it comes to violations of sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. You don't want your organization to be on the wrong side of the news, okay? Because both locally and internationally, you will lose the case in one way or the other. So we wouldn't want that to happen. And that is why our focus today is on what we can do to prevent sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in our workplaces. We don't want it to happen at all. We don't want to be on the wrong side of the law, both locally or internationally. Having said that, what is your role as an HR practitioner? What can you do? One of the things you can do is policies. Set, communicate, uphold, and implement clear prevention to sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment policies. Your policy should be such that is comprehensive enough. It should clearly define what constitutes sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. The conventional definition is there. Nevertheless, you should be able to set clearly what it means for your organization, for your staff members, and how it relates to the people you work with, the community, your customers, and all of that. How do you approach them? It doesn't make sense that, for example, you work in a bank and then a customer walks in and then your staff is touching the customer inappropriately. If that customer maybe is a married person and that person takes up the case professionally, you know what that would do to the reputation of your organization. So your policy should define not just about how it's is defined within the organization as it relates to your co-workers. It should also define what it means for your customers, for your community where you work, and all of that. So some of the things, and in fact, you should also specify what are the consequences. It should be clear. People should be made to know. As soon as they join the organization, this should be the first thing, during your orientation. They should be made to understand clearly, and they should be taken through it thoroughly and be made to sign that they understand and are willing to abide by these policies. And your policies should ideally include some of these principles. They are not exhaustive, but these are the ones that should at least be there. First is that SEER is prohibited. I'm sure by now you know when you see SEER, you know what we're talking about, right? So because it undermines the integrity of your organization, and it could lead to or could be described as a gross misconduct, depending on the severity of the case, especially for harassment. Okay, so the definition should be very clear on what is prohibited. For example, in my current organization, even if it is legal in some countries or some context to engage in prostitution, I, for example, as a member of this organization, cannot, under any circumstances, engage in paying for sex. It is totally prohibited, right? So this is because already definition of sexual exploitation is covered by that situation of people who offer their bodies in exchange for money. So this is already covered, and if I engage in it in any way, form, or guise, I am already in practicing that sexual exploitation. So it is strictly prohibited. So for my organization, I am an ambassador of the organization every day, every time, whether at work or even when I'm not at work. And because of that, sexual exploitation of any form or guise is strictly prohibited. It should be very clear, clearly defined policy that everyone who comes in reads and understands. If they're not okay with it, they can leave, they can leave the organization. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we need to set a policy that clearly defines this prohibition. And we also need to set our policy to clearly define zero tolerance for inaction. By inaction, we mean failure to take action to prevent, report, or respond to allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse. Okay, it should be very clear for your organization that this is not acceptable. If somebody or a victim comes up with a report to say, oh, this happened to me, we should be clear on what must happen, what's the response we should take, who should be held accountable. It should be very clear. And if you, as the HR or whoever that it was reported to, decided not to do anything about it, the policy should be very clear on what should happen to those kinds of people. In most cases, it is contract termination. Now, another area where this should cover is people who witness a situation of sexual abuse or harassment. Most times these victims are being threatened and they are not comfortable to come up to report these cases. And maybe you are a witness as a bystander. It should, at least your policy should, highly recommended, it should create situations or platforms that encourage people to air up these kinds of situations, bring it to the fore. Even if you witnessed it, even if you're not sure, raise a concern. Let it shall just be investigated. Let us leave no stones unturned, like zero tolerance for people who do not take action because they are aware of a situation. Maybe they are trying to collaborate together with the perpetrator, or maybe because the perpetrator is somebody you highly respect, you don't want to take the case further. Oh, please, we are sorry it happened. No, nothing should happen. Please, let's not escalate it after here. No. This situation should, we, as an organization, we should be firm on how we deal with this situation, and it should be spelled clearly in our policies. Now, our policy should also contain the appropriate response. Okay, if someone has a suspicion, even though it is not validated, what do we do? How do we respond to those situations? If we receive a report, incidents, or situations or allegation of these things happening, do we just wave it off? No. The policy should be clear on the kind of response that we need to do, so that whoever does not take action when they become aware of those situations, we know that they have been in breach of our company's policies. And our policy should be very clear on how the culprits should be held accountable. We cannot let people, maybe because it is management, somebody in the management cadre that's perpetrated this vice, then we let the person slide. But if it is somebody at the lower cadre, then we bring up all the policies and implement it appropriately. No. whoever, no matter their rank, no matter their achievements, no matter how important they are for us as an organization, we should spell out clearly what must be done, whoever that is found wanting in these situations. Then, most importantly, these situations must be handled with strict confidentiality. You must ensure to protect the dignity, the safety of especially the victims, and even to a large extent, of the perpetrator, because sometimes these things are mere allegations that may, after investigation, may be found to be untrue. So you don't want to go all public with somebody's name when we are not very sure that this thing has happened, right? Even when we are sure that it has happened, we trash it, deal with this person internally without necessarily going to the public with his name, face, or information. So as much as it lies within you, this case should be handled with strict confidentiality, because it has impact on stereotyping, on how people look at the victims or even the perpetrator at the end of the day, even when all issues have been sorted out. So you don't want these things to spill out. So of course, we all know that one of the critical things for us as HR is confidentiality. Almost everything we do in HR is confidential, confidential, confidential. So I wouldn't want to overflog this situation. But more importantly, you must ensure that your policy has clearly defined procedure on how to support and protect all the parties in the process of especially investigation, to find out who is culpable, what happened, what did not happen, and eventually meting out all the necessary punishment that may be stipulated in your policies. So you must make sure you handle all of this process with strict confidentiality. So these are the highly recommended things that should be, inculcated in your policy when you are drafting one, if you don't have one already, right? And if you have one and some of these things are not clearly defined, I invite you to please revisit your policy and see, how you can improve on what you have on ground already. Now let's get back to our key parts again, and let us answer this. Do your current employer have a clearly defined SEER policy in place? What would it be for you? Do you have it currently? Or are you in the process of developing one, or you don't have any at all? Okay, yes, I can see someone says they have in their organization. Yes. Someone says, yeah, they don't have. Somebody else says it's a work in progress. Oh, thank you so much for your participation. Somebody else is not sure. I can understand. Please, if you're not sure after today, let it be. We hope that work resumes tomorrow for most of us that are not working or working from home. Please engage with your HR or your management to ask them to be sure that you have it on ground. If you don't have, for those of you that say you don't have, please make sure you start that conversation already, because your organization may not be immune to these things happening. It may not have happened, but we don't want it to happen. Yes. Okay, someone says, yes, we do. And every employee signs off during induction. Exactly, that is how it should be. Everybody should sign off. But having it is a good step, but not just enough. We need to do more to ensure that people live by it, because most times people sign things and they utterly forget. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we remind people frequently, and sometimes even update these policies when need be with new things that are happening, because maybe the time it was drafted was 1950. Today we have some other form of sexual exploitation happening. Do you know, for example, that sharing of pornographic images or videos in the workspace could be termed as harassment? That's sexual harassment. Okay, so if this is not captured in your policy, maybe you want to review, maybe you want to check what is the current trend, what is the new inventions and new happenings in the workplace globally and internationally, to update what you have in case it is not updated. Thank you so very much for everyone who participated. I appreciate that. Now, going forward, the next thing is leadership. You need to prioritize and embed a culture of zero tolerance for inaction. For example, when we talk about leadership, we're talking about leadership buy-in. First is that your leadership or your leaders must show clear and visible commitment to zero tolerance to inaction on SEER. In other words, we're trying to say that it should be very clear for the organization, anyone who participates or who observes and did not raise concern, the leadership must or should, to a large extent, sanction this, that everybody must report. For example, in my organization currently, if you witness a situation of sexual exploitation, abuse, or harassment, and you keep short, when investigation comes and it is found that you witnessed it or you saw it or you are not aware of it and you did not raise concern, then you also have a case to answer because you are aiding and abetting. Okay, so management must show that leadership that it is zero tolerance to this. Anyone who sees it happening is duty bound to raise concern so that it will be nipped to the bud even before it gets too far. And by that, you need to engage in a lot of training for us HR people. We need to engage in a lot of training for people to recognize these things when they happen. Some people may not even understand that, for example, touching people inappropriately is sexual harassment. They may not know. They may feel like, oh, I saw a beautiful lady in the workspace and I think I want to be in a relationship with her. And then I keep telling her, I know there is something for us guys, or when she says, no, I don't want these kinds of attention. And you feel like, she's just doing shakara now. I'll try again, cool guys. And we'll go again and again and again. You keep trying and keep disturbing this lady. You see her at the walkway, hello, how far that my proposal? You see her at the lobby eating, oh, hello, how far that my proposal? You are already getting to the point of sexual harassment because you're making this person uncomfortable. They've said they don't want, leave them alone. Okay, some colleagues do not know these things, and we need to put it at their faces for them to know it. And sometimes even the victims may not know that they are being sexually harassed. And that is why we must ensure that we escalate seriously this awareness in our organizations so that people will know how it works, how it happens, and especially people at the leadership level, people who have some level of leadership authority in the place of work. They need to understand how imbalance in their authority or power may influence this kind of situations. We need to make them aware so that everyone is well guided. Another part is we must ensure that leadership buys into this innovation by allocating sufficient resources that will help us to prevent and respond to it when it happens. It is not just enough to draft a policy and keep it on the ground, but to a large extent, let it be that there are, for example, adequate human or technical and financial resources that will support victims that maybe for one reason or the other will become exposed to this kind of situation. We pray it doesn't happen, but you should, at least in your budget line, make provisions for situations like this. In case it happens, you want to hire, for example, a qualified psychological support for the person. You want to maybe give the person facilities to work from home, separate this person from the perpetrator or something like that. Sometimes these things cost money. Okay, even if, for example, worst case scenario, it goes to court and all of those things, it involves money. So sometimes you want to get management buy-in to create a budget line for these kinds of things, especially even when it goes to the training part. And even some organizations, depending on how big they are, they may hire a person whose core mandate is to ensure that the messages of prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse is, spread everywhere in the organization, is there in their policies, in almost everything that they do, and to a large extent that people even sign it off. Somebody is there monitoring and making sure that the right training is being offered to people at the right time. People are aware and all of those things. So if your organization is that, big and can afford to, it will be also very nice to have dedicated human resource that will manage these kinds of situations. So it involves money, and we need the leadership to get buy-in into this. And also we need to regularly assess and monitor the implementation. What is the impact? Look at the numbers. How many have happened in a year? One, like we mentioned earlier, is too many. We don't even want any to happen at all. Or could it be that people are not reporting the situations and it is happening? Okay, so you need to critically assess what is your risk exposure level. And also the trainings you put in place, you want to see how many people have taken the trainings. Are people aware of how to report their cases in case that these situations happen? Okay, so you want to take surveys. You want to know what people know about these situations. Do they know what sexual exploitation or abuse is? If it happens, do they know how to report? Do they know what is available to them in case somebody harasses them so that they will get justice? Are they aware? So you need to check these things regularly, and it will help you to see how well your policy is doing and where you might need to adjust to ensure that you are on top of the game. Then lastly, for leadership is to set out and incentivize clear responsibilities on prevention for sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. By that, we mean that if possible, include it in the job responsibilities of everyone. For example, in my organization, part of our objective every year, we have core competencies that we expect every one of our staff members to live by. And this will also involve things, for example, like respect, mutual respect for everyone. So if you're living by that, which your manager is supposed to appraise you every other year. So if people know that they are going to be appraised based on this situation, for example, they will most likely not engage in it. Okay, so it should be part of the things we expect people. In fact, in our job descriptions, we should clearly spell it out for people that safeguarding is part of our job every day. You must ensure that you protect our customers, you protect our your co-workers, and all of those things. Let it be part of our day-to-day job. That way, people will be encouraged to ensure that they keep by that. Then moving on, we have the core parts which we focus on is the prevention, which majorly focuses on assess, the risks that you are the sexual exploitation and abuse and harassment risks, and then take action to ensure that it is prevented across all activities of your organization. And by that, we mean ensure that you embed these measures, the training, the risk management, your due diligence, the reporting, direction, detection, and vetting into your core. Let it be part of the things that you do as daily. Let it be parts, like it should not be separate from the core work that you do. Then you must make sure that your people understand the risks. You must monitor it, like we mentioned earlier, regularly monitor it, ensure that you do frequent training and awareness for your people. Make sure that people understands what we mean by power imbalances. Make sure your people understand what they will do and they will cross the line. You must ensure that you spread it consistently, okay, and that your people understand it clearly, and it will help you to manage the risks of it happening. And again, you must ensure that you engage the most vulnerable groups in the design of mechanisms to prevent and report SEER. Now, the best person to tell you how to mitigate an issue is the people that are mostly exposed to that issue. So, for example, we've come to see from all the statistics we've considered earlier that women are in the workplace the most vulnerable group. So if you're coming up with an idea of how to prevent this thing in your policy, what we can do to prevent it from happening, I think you should engage these people more, because they've probably exposed to it and they could be the best persons to tell you what to do, the strategies to put in place to ensure that it doesn't happen to them. Or even when it happens, the kind of things they expect you to do for them to be able to feel safe again, to feel heard, to feel respected, to feel protected. Okay, so you want to engage with these vulnerable groups to ensure that whatever policy you're coming up with will be such that will be all encompassing. Then lastly, you want to use relevant vetting schemes. Most of us already in our organization have these pre-employment checks, for example, references happening frequently. But most of the times we only focus more on the competence part of the people that we are hiring. I want to engage you today to, after today, please ensure that you include things around sexual exploitation and abuse. You want to find out, have this person ever been accused of this kind of situation? We want to ensure a workplace where we do not create an opportunity for perpetrators of these vices to find their way, one way or the other, from one organization into another. The workplace has no place for these kinds of people who practice these kinds of acts. So you must ensure that your reference check is so thorough that it filters out people who have these kinds of cases in their lifetime. We don't want them to get into your organization, because the chances that they will do it again is very high. And if you're not already signed up to misconduct disclosure scheme, I think it is okay, especially depending on the kind of organization you run, especially if you are in a multinational organization. It is important that you sign up for this misconduct disclosure scheme. Look it up on Google, you will find them, and sign up your organization, feed into that process, and also take information from that process to ensure you check everyone that is coming into your organization to make sure that they don't have any form of allegation on them. as regards sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, so that you can protect your current workforce. Then lastly is our response. Okay, we must encourage reporting, accountability, and a victim survivor centered approach. And by that, we mean that you need to establish, test, and encourage the use of safe and accessible mechanisms for receiving complaints and detecting concerns. Okay, so you must ensure that the process, that the mechanisms that you use to receive these concerns are so safe that people can approach you and air their concern. If, for example, you are in an open space where your office is, and then people must always come to that open space to talk to you, imagine whoever that is going to report a case to you might not feel comfortable because another person might just be hearing, and they don't want that stigmatization to follow them. And that is why they may not feel comfortable to air up their views, or even possibly how safe it is that when people report issues, that it won't get into the wrong ears, and before they know it, their contract is terminated. These kinds of situations. So you must be able to ensure that your process is safe and secure for people to air their concern. Then you should be able to help your personnel to know what to do if they experience or witness or even suspect that something is happening. Okay, you must develop and implement guidance and training so that personnel know how to identify, see, and what to do if eventually it happens. So this training should be something you should do minimum once every year. Remind people that, okay, this is how to identify it, this is what to do in case it happens, this is where to go, this is who to talk to, this is how to prevent it, and all of those things. Please put it as part of your plan every year. Then you must also set out a system that helps your victims, or that's the victims of sexual exploitation and abuse, okay, to or even the survivors, to report and access support. Okay, so people should feel free to report. And if they report, what happens to them? You should be able to respond appropriately, whether they need medical support, whether they need psychosocial support, or even to an extent, legal assistance, because there may be cases where you have to refer them to the law enforcement agencies to see how they can gain justice on certain cases. Okay, so you should be able to respond and investigate cases in a timely, fair, and confidential, safe, and sensitive manner. You should not handle it lackadaisically. You should not handle it as if it didn't matter, as if, oh, it's just one of those things. You self, why you wear mini skirts? If not because of mini skirt we wear, for no happen. No, you should be able to manage it appropriately, and your investigation should be thorough. Because if you don't manage it internally, it will eventually go out. And if it goes out, it has implication on the image of your organization. So to a large extent, as much as possible, you want to mitigate it and manage it well internally before it goes out. Then lastly, you want to take timely and appropriate disciplinary action. That someone is found wanting, you don't want to, okay, yeah, we found that the hiring manager or the regional manager is one who is guilty, but he has a regional meeting that he must represent us in by next week. So let's leave him, let him go for that meeting and come back. No, it's zero tolerance. Anyone who is found guilty should be disciplined immediately and timely. Don't let it linger. Justice denied, they say it's not, justice delayed is justice denied, right? I think that's the right word. Okay, so you don't want this to linger for too long, right? And anyone who is found guilty, or who even attempt to retaliate against those who report, should be dealt with conclusively. Okay, even if possible, consider legal actions when necessary to ensure that these things are taken care of. Remember, we talked about our local laws and international laws that prohibit these things. If it becomes very necessary, you may want to refer the case to our legal or maybe law enforcement agencies to take appropriate action. However, whatever you do, okay, whatever you do, make sure it is with the consent of the perpetrator, of the victim or the survivor, because their reputation to a large extent is at stake, and make sure that it is safe to do so. Now, this ends what we must do as HR to ensure that our organizations are safe and our people are protected against sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Now, let us look at some case studies. I will read from here. Imagine that you are an HR manager in a leading tech firm. Some days ago, a male marketing manager, Mr. Abu Ugochukwu Olaiton, approached you to report that he was taken advantage of by a female senior manager, Miss Ruki Igla, from the same company during the last corporate retreat. He could not recall all the details as he was drunk that evening. However, he woke up naked in the bedroom, and Miss Ruki, who claimed that she slept with him upon his persistent request during the retreat's gala night, even though she noticed that he was tipsy. He claims not to have a memory of him asking Miss Ruki for sexual favors. Now, I can cede the mic to you. Tell me, does Mr. Abu have a valid case? Just one person, because of our time, we can just take one comment. Anyone, please. Does Mr. Abu has a valid case? Why and why not? Is anyone willing to say anything? Any hands raised?
I can't see any hands up.
Okay. You can use the chat box if you want.
Okay, I see Felu.
Thank you, Ifolu, please.
Okay. Interesting session so far, Chuko. Number one, I think Mr. Abu has a valid case because in the situation that his memory was already distorted. He wasn't in the right place to make a proper decision. He was under the influence. So Miss Ruki shouldn't have taken advantage of him because of the situation he was in. And also, Miss Ruki is a senior manager. There is what's the word? There is a power difference there. So it could have been that Miss Ruki took advantage of him because she's his manager and not really because he had persistently asked for sexual favors from her.
Thank you very much, Ifeolu. I appreciate your response. I can see the response from Grace on the chats, who says he has no valid case. Prince also says he has no valid case because he lacks evidence. Precious also says, yes, he does because he was drunk, so she took advantage of it. Prince also added, this is witch hunting. No valid case. Thank you. Thank you, Prince. Thank you. Okay, so we've all answered well. Now,
we have somebody, Mr. Hand.
Okay, please.
Sarah. Sarah, you can unmute and speak, please. Okay, you can move on. Maybe our hands are up by mistake.
Okay, so Mary Ohimai says proper investigation must be carried out before we know whether he has a case or not. Yes, as much as we advocate for proper investigation, our position as HR is not to take any case lightly. For example, this case has been reported and at the face of it, you say, oh no, he has no valid case. Let's sweep it under the carpet. It couldn't have happened. He's probably, into this and all of those stuff. I think we shouldn't be in a rush as HR people to get into these kinds of conclusion. But yes, like Ifeolua mentioned clearly, there is power imbalance, and two, he was not at the frame of giving consent. This is what we, in the legal terms, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if we have any legal luminary in the house here. I think they call it, forgot that word now.
Undue influence. Undue influence.
Yes, thank you. Undue influence. Yes. So he was not in the right frame of his mind. And at that point in time, someone who is not at the right frame of his mind can never give consent. Just the same law that is protecting a child who is below 18, even if they gave consent, their consent is null and void as far as the law is concerned. Okay, so that person is not in the frame of mind to give consent. It's just like saying that you had the carnal knowledge of a mad woman on the street and you said, yeah, you asked her and she said yes. Because of that, you have done nothing wrong. That person is not in the frame of mind to give that kind of consent at that particular point in time. Okay, so this is indeed a concern. And I think personally that yes, he has a valid case. Okay, going up to point number 2. How will you classify this case?
Sandra up, please.
Okay, please go ahead.
You know we need to give consent.
Please.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so for me, what if the Mr. Abu decide to frame the supervisor? Yes, she is of the higher position, but what if it's a game of trying to frame her in order to bring her down? So that is why I said proper investigation must be carried out.
Yes, exactly. That is where we need to investigate to be very sure that it's not, a witch hunt, and all of those things. And of course, our policy, like we mentioned earlier, must contain repercussions. People should not just because I don't like this person's face, and then I will try to lure the person into an uncomfortable situation and then come out and start crying, oh, I've been raped, I've been done this, and exploitation, abuse. No. So we need to investigate clearly to be sure what really transpired. But at least my point is, at the face of it, every allegation should be taken very seriously. We should not discard it very quickly, maybe because we even know maybe Mr. Abu has been trying to get the attention of Miss Ruki, way back during work and all of those things. And maybe that was the day she finally accepted, But then at that point in time, he was not in his right frame of mind. And from the testimony, she concurred that yes, she noticed he was tipsy. So she is aware that he was not in his right frame of mind. And whatever happened shouldn't have happened. At least let him wake up when he's in his right frame of mind and he wants, then you guys can engage. But even at that, in some organizations, it will still be termed as exploitation because she's a higher manager at a higher level and there's power imbalance. From an organization especially, it will still be termed as exploitation. Okay, I think that already answers the second question to a large extent. So let's go to the third question. How will you handle the case? Adano or Motola raised hand. Please go ahead. Hello? Adano, are you saying something?
Yes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you for the presentation, for this session. It's been wonderful. So there is this case like, for instance, they agree they've been going out and meeting them, and it kind of comes to the place of work. In that case, how will you end that? Because it's not as if nobody is forcing anybody, but it's kind of, it got messy.
Sorry, I'm not sure I got your question clearly. Are you referring to this case study or a different case altogether?
A different.
Okay, so what was the question again? Hello?
Okay.
Did anyone get what she was trying to say?
Maybe she should type the question. Our network is not stable. Our network is not romantic at all.
Emanuela, okay, we can take Emanuela last and then we can look at, please, anyone who is speaking, help us speak to the third point, or how will you handle the case? Thank you. Emanuela, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate this session because it's actually an eye-opener. But I was just trying to, quickly address the number one. From what I understand from the case study, it's looking like, it was at the office whilst they were having their corporate retreat. So for him to have woken up naked in the bed of the senior manager, I think he has a valid case. I mean, how did he move from the office to being on the, the bed of the senior manager? That's one. Second, I would say yes. There could be some intimidation because, she's holding a senior manager's role. So it might not really have a say. regarding the case, except someone much higher than himself and even much higher than the senior manager, that's Ms. Ruki, can actually then speak on his behalf. So I think he does have a valid case. And to answer question 2, I would say that he was purely abused.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuela, for that honorable submission. Okay, so as HR professionals, how will you handle the case? Anyone, please. What will you do to Mr. Abu and to Ms. Ruki? Okay, so Blessing Ijoma says, we only have the man's side of the story, but we also have to hear what the woman is saying. The fact that she's the senior official does not make her the villain. Both parties should be heard before further action is taken. I agree with you. Both parties need to be heard. Okay, Prince says on handling the case, thorough investigation or investigations without emotion. He's very strong on investigation. I agree with you. Okay, so do an anonymous survey with the affected team, within the affected team, and then 3, hearing session. Someone will eventually budge. The investigation and company's policy will play out, according to Vicky Starr. Thank you very much. Is someone also trying to say something?
Okay, good evening. I'm Prince.
Yes, good evening, sir.
So I discovered that a lot of persons, maybe in the last few months, there are cases like harassment, though I know the affected organizations, they don't have policies in place. So I wouldn't blame them that much. But what I would just add here is, I use the word emotion because most of these HRs, they are ladies, and they swing into action immediately once they hear that, oh, one of us has been this, that. No, we are talking about Abu now. Abu is the one affected because it's a male. No, we are calm. Now, assuming it's placed other way around where the other gender is affected, the female HR should don't be in a hurry to jump into conclusion that since I've seen Abu as has been blinking at me at times, he will come to my office, the way he smile at me, he's harassing. Calm down. Abu might not have done that. Mrs. Ruki must not have done that. So investigation matters here in this situation. And then the eventual result will even make you a giant HR in handling such a SEAH. So I put emotion here. Don't put emotion when you are handling this case, so that you don't blown or is overbloated out of proportion, or the handling doesn't really make any sensible result. So that is my addition. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I totally concur. Investigation, of course, no case should be taken on the face of it. You need to investigate thoroughly to ensure that you uncover all the facts to the case so that you don't met out injustice to somebody in the name of justice, or maybe punish someone unduly. So it is important, of course, that we investigate the matter. And see, there is no policy that says because you are HR, you are the chief investigating officer. If you know you are not capable of doing this investigation because maybe you feel you'll be biased, like he tried to shade the concept of women supporting women. Supposing it's a woman that is a victim, and because you are a woman, and then, oh no, or maybe because I'm a guy and today is Abu who is affected, and then I jump all at it and put all my emotions and all my energy in it, and most times you miss the point because already you have a made-up mindset around it. It's important that these investigations are done thoroughly and without any form of bias. If you think you do not have the competence to manage it, please cede that to someone who you believe should be able to manage. Some organizations, if they can afford, have people who specially are employed to do these investigative activities, and they do it thoroughly. So supposing this is possible in your organization, please, if you can afford it, get one. If you cannot, maybe sometimes you may employ another organization to help you unravel the case. Okay, so depending on what you can afford, and then this goes down to management buying. But more importantly, whether it is true or not, there is a need to handle the case compassionately and confidentially. Remember all the steps we mentioned earlier? As an HR, I expect you to bring Mr. Abu and give him that succor, that support, that comfort. Find out, does he need psychological support? Will this affect him? Does he need some days off from work to recuperate, and be in the right frame of mind? You also need to ensure you also protect the integrity of Rookie, because as of today, it is still an allegation until we find, proof clearly that these things has happened. So it is still an allegation. So you treat it as such and you don't victimize her too quickly. If possible, you also want to put her away from work so that she doesn't meddle with certain things or influence certain processes of the investigative process. In my organization, for example, situations like this, that person will be put immediately under administrative leave so that proper investigation will take place. So if you can afford, and of course, putting two people away from work already affects the staff strength and the productivity and all of that. So you need to manage these things very clearly, but make sure you provide clear support and protection to the victim or the survivor, as the case may be. And if you carry out your proper investigation, at the end of the day, you find that Ms. Rookie is guilty of what she's been accused of, you must implement the full wrath of your punishments as stipulated in your policy. And if it is found at the end of the day to be a witch hunt by Mr. Abu, for example, then you must ensure that you nip it to the bud and punish him appropriately so that he doesn't tarnish people's images unduly, or anybody in the organization taking anyone for granted for that kind of situation. So as HR, we must handle it very well in line, like somebody mentioned here, with the company's policy. And if you don't have the policy in place, what will guide you on how you manage these situations? So we don't pray it happens, but if you don't have the policy, please put it as part of your objective for 2024 that you have the policy in place. And then maybe by 2025, you begin to escalate and make sure that everyone is aware of the policy, how they can access support, and what is available to them. Thank you very much. Now, on case study number 2, I had put this up in some HR platforms where I belong. Some of you may have seen it, and a whole lot of wonderful engagement happened in the past 2-3 days when I put up this up. So I wouldn't want to engage so much in this because of our time. I would not do this very well, but I want to shed a light on. It is easier when the situation is in a corporate organization that have certain degree of hierarchy, where even the highest person in the organization can be held to account by the process or by the organization one way or the other. But it becomes more dicey when we are working in a situation of a one-man business. Okay, it becomes even more dicey, more challenging. If the highest person, the oga at the top, is the one who perpetrates this evil, this sexual exploitation, abuse, or harassment, what will you do as an HR person when it comes to you? Because I mean, you can approach him and he fires you, fires the person who is also involved. What will you do? Okay, so it's easier when you are working in an environment where there are proper structure in place, where there are proper hierarchy in place, where everyone is held accountable by some systems or some group or something like that. But it becomes even more dicey when the topmost authority is the one who is perpetrating these crimes. So in that situation, maybe I will just one comment. What do you think? What will happen? What should happen? Or what will you do as an HR person if this kind of case is brought to your attention in a one-man business context? Just one person that can take the mic. You can drop your comments on the chat. We'll read them out as much as possible. Anyone that has an idea? Excuse me. Hello, are we still together?
I can't see any hands up. Okay, I think I see Patrick. Let me see.
Please go ahead.
Patrick Blessing, you can proceed. Some comments are dropping in the chat box too, while we wait for Patrick Blessing to respond.
Okay. You can unmute.
Blessing, please speak.
And speak.
Okay. This Okenkwa says it's complicated. Vicky Star says very complicated, I must say. Sarah says, this is a hard knot.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
evening, Sarah. Good evening, Patrick.
So far, it's been an awesome time. And I must say, he has actually pointed out a lot of things. But in this case study, with regards to a one-man business, I would like to say that at first, it boils down to when the owner of a business comes to you, asking you out, stuff like that. It's a case of, permit me to use this word, it's a case of you do, abi you no go do. So you then say, oh, okay, oh, I'm interested, or I'm not interested. Most of the time when you come out straight with someone and let them know your stance that you're not interested, they let you be. Most of them get to understand that you coming out straight to them like, I'm not interested, it shows that whatever you want to do, whether you want to terminate my appointment, whatever you choose to do, is your own business. Do you understand? Now, as an HR person, which I am not per se, I would like to say that I will first of all ask you as a person, you that is involved complaining of sexual harassment, what were your stance? Were you massaging the situation? Did you make it clear? It's different when someone comes to you and tries to force themselves on you during work hours in an office setting. And it's also different where you try to massage the situation, you're one leg in, you're either putting a leg in and putting a leg out. I don't know if I'm communicating, if you understand what I mean. So it's a different situation. So as an HR person, I'll question you directly, because when the owner of a business knows the powers that he has as a person. So he might want to utilize it in a weird way, in a way that he feels, oh, I can do whatever I want. But then your stance as a person, do you understand? So you that is directly involved, first of all, caution you first, and then let the owner of the business know that this is what it is. You understand? This is how it should go down. And yes, you have to be diplomatic about distance. You can't just come at it and add your emotions to it. If not, you'll be greatly affected. You get injured along the way and your career will be affected. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Blessing Patrick, for your submission. Well, I may not totally agree with, especially trying to engage, blaming the victim for you are massaging or not massaging. They are clearly victims, and I've seen this kind of situations play out several times. Well, it's unfortunate if it ever happens, but yeah, these are realities in the places where we work. And most times in one-man business, these things are highly perpetrated. And when I put up this on the platforms, a lot of people got back to me to say, oh, I've been a victim to this. What did you do? Oh, I just had to leave the place. I just have to leave. I just have to leave. But then these things continues perpetually and nobody brings them to book. And this is unwelcome. Prince says, if the man is approachable, I will communicate my stance based on the law in words and message, email for documentation purposes. If he's not approachable, I will discuss the gazettes or where it's quoted in the law. If it persists, I will take it up with the body in charge. And about 2 other people agrees with him. It's very dicey. I will leave this to you to decide the best approach to follow. But of all the comments I saw on the platforms, one comment caught my attention and I would like to read it out. This comment was made on CIPM Abuja WhatsApp group by a senior colleague by the name Z Jesus Babe. I think so, that's the name of this person, who says, my response would be this. Firstly, HR should be just like auditors. You should not maintain a position where you are afraid of the business owner and cannot be objective in the discharge of your duties. If you currently work as HR and you are afraid to speak to the business owner, then there is a huge cause for worry. First things first, Do you have a policy on sexual harassment? If not, why? You can develop that policy in no time. If you have such a policy, what does it say? Does it cover just the employees? What about the management and the board? I'll take a pause here to say the importance of our policy covering everyone. And if we start right by setting the policies right before it even happens, and management accedes to this policy, you realize that as HR, it becomes even easier for you to approach management if already you have done this policy with their approval, though they are the ultimate authority when it comes to that organization, but they know that the policy has set up punishments and all of those things, and they are aware consistently, and they know that the people know what to do in those situations. Chances are very high that they will not do it. And even if they do it, it creates a leverage for you as HR to approach them based on that policy that they signed into law in their organization, and you can have a conversation in a way that is fruitful for everyone. And of course, how you do this matters a lot. Then she goes further to say, my advice to you as HR should be to do what I outlined below. One, maintain confidentiality and reassure the employee that her complaint is being taken seriously and that her confidentiality will be protected to the greatest extent possible. Avoid discussing the matter with anyone outside of HR or legal counsel unless required by law or with the employee's consent. Two, listen actively with empathy. Create a safe and supportive environment for the employee to share her experience without judgment. Use active listening techniques such as maintaining eye contact, nodding, and paraphrasing to show you are engaged. Avoid interrupting or minimizing her concerns. Three, document the accusation by creating a detailed record of the conversation, including the employee's name, date, time, and a summary of the allegations. Collect any evidence provided by the lady, such as emails, text message, or witness statements. Where there is none, encourage her to try and get a recording or message that confirms her allegation. Well, personally, I wouldn't encourage you to tell people to go get evidences. Sometimes it always gets messy, but at least make sure you listen and document what you have as much as possible, and then go to the next point that she outlined. Initiate an immediate investigation by following your company's established sexual harassment policy and procedures. Conduct a thorough and impartial investigation to gather all relevant facts. Conduct the investigation fairly and objectively, avoiding any preconceived notions or biases. Interview the lady and anyone else who can confirm her allegation, if any. Most people, especially other staff, will refuse to come out for fear of losing their jobs, so be ready to work with just the accuser and the evidence she can get. 5, please seek legal advice if you have a lawyer in the house or anyone that you can speak with to help build the case or investigation. Then next, now is the time to speak with your business owner. Explain to him that there is an allegation of sexual harassment against him and you want to address it with him. Be mindful of your choice of words, but without taking away from the seriousness of the accusation. Let him know that his behavior is against the laid down policy of the organization. Do not be confrontational, but be sure that your tone is firm without being disrespectful. Explain the effect of on the staff and the ripple effect on the organization, as well as the possible outcome if the case goes to the police and subsequently to courts. Then 8, she says, his response will determine if you will report him to the board or advise the staff to speak with human rights activists who can help channel her case. In all of this, she says, please ensure a timely response to the allegation, developing a policy if there is none, and enforcing it and providing sexual harassment prevention training for staff and management. You may lose your job if you are already a complacent HR leader who doesn't want to upset the cat, but know that this can be your daughter tomorrow. Just by the way, You can advise the lady to send him a long WhatsApp voice note mentioning his name and explaining that she is unhappy with the way he has constantly harassed her sexually. She can choose to type a message instead. His response can serve as evidence. Evil prevails because people do not speak up. Wake up there, HRs. You are not a boy, and no business owner should make you afraid to do your job. I think I like her comments, and this is her submission. To a large extent, I agree with most of her submissions, and I think that is the way to go for HR. And I love the fact that our apex regulating body in Nigeria for the HR profession, which is the CIPM, has told us that we must ensure that we uphold the tenets of integrity and its values, and we should consider all options as much as possible within our profession. Even if it means losing our job, we must ensure that we uphold the tenet of the profession. And my dear HRs, this is my submission to you, that whoever, irrespective of their power play in the system, you must be firm enough to do your job as an HR person. And if that person victimizes you also as an HR, then you have a very valid case. So it always gets messy, but at the end, it gets better. But we must ensure that we let everyone know that sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment should have absolutely no place in our place of work at all times. Now, going forward, I want you to reflect briefly on these points. One, as touching policy. Do you have a CA policy in place in your workplace? If you don't, what can you do about it? If you do, is it all encompassing? Does it need to be updated? Are your staff members aware of this policy? Do they know what to do, when to do? Do they know what is happening, how to classify it, whether it is exploitation, abuse, or harassment? If they don't, that takes us to the next point. Have you trained your staff sufficiently on what to do if or when they experience fear? The onus is on you. If you have not, please, can you consider it already? If you have, do you think you need to do a refresher training so people will be reminded of the seriousness of this issue? Then thirdly, is bothering about reporting. Are your staff comfortable enough to use your processes to report without fear of retaliation? Will they comfortably report using the processes you've set in place? If not, check it out. What is wrong in our mechanism? Is there a way we can strengthen our reporting mechanisms to make it safer and more confidential for people to air their concerns? Okay, so you need to put this on the table as well, and you need to discuss this with your management and agree on what you can do to improve. Most importantly, engage with your staff, especially those that are the vulnerable group, to find out what other channels would be more appropriate for them to report. Or could it just be that even when they report, nothing is done? How accountable are the top management of your company to HR policies and procedures, especially as bordering sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment? Okay, will your people feel comfortable to report because they know actions will be taken? If not, my dear HRs, what can we do to strengthen our accountability systems to make sure that people will be held accountable if they fall foul of these kinds of situations, that people will have confidence to report because they know that something will be done? That, my dear HR, brings us to the next point, which is my conclusion, that we have explored all the critical roles that HR professionals play in preventing sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in the workplace. By implementing comprehensive policies that we've mentioned, providing effective training, and establishing strong support systems, we can create work environments where everyone feels safe, respected, and empowered to contribute their best. Remember, a safe and inclusive workplace is not only a legal requirement, but also a moral obligation. My dear HR practitioners, let's make out time to reflect on all these points that we've discussed tonight and see areas where we can strengthen in our place of work. Who do you need to talk to? What must be done? What policies need to be strengthened? What training do we need to do? How frequently do we need to do them to ensure that this vice is not found anywhere in and around our working environment, most especially these days that these occurrences has become a little bit more prevalent. And this discussion is only but coming timely so that we do the needful before it sneaks into our workspace. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this point, it is open for us to have questions. Please, these are my contacts. If you want to connect, I'm available on LinkedIn. You can send me an email or call me on phone. I'll be available to respond and work with you as much as possible in case you need us to collaborate on any area that we may have discussed tonight. Thank you so very much, everyone. And the floor is open for the next few minutes for your questions, contributions, and every other point. Thank you, everyone. Do we have anyone with questions, please? Yes. Two participants raise their
Yes,
hands,
good
please.
evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm having network challenge. That's why I had to type my question. So my question is a situation that colleagues attended a wedding or a burial ceremony, and they had to lodge in hotels, and there is this superior that has been disturbing you. Fortunately, unfortunately, you all lodged in a hotel, and along the line, he or she came into your room, and one thing or the other happened. If such thing is reported to the HR, how will HR handle that?
Yes. So the situation here is this issue happened at the course of your duty. Okay, you are on an official assignment and this happened. Ideally, everyone should be given a separate room, especially when you are of different gender. In fact, these days that we've had issues about same-sex relationships and all of those things, even putting two people of the same sex in the same room may not be very safe anymore. So if you're going on, and this also borders again around policies. As HR, we need to first of all ensure that our policy is such that protects people even when they are sent on these kinds of assignments, so that they are given their privacy, they have access to lock the door and keep the key to themselves to avoid anybody coming in without invitation. However, in this situation where it happens, so it is important that the victim or the survivor, as the case may be, will raise the concern. And what should happen, like we mentioned, what should happen or what the HR should do is like what we've outlined in the previous case study, that proper investigation should be done. And if this staff is found wanting, strict punishment should be implemented. But where the problem happens is if there is no policy on ground that defines the degree of punishment that should happen, then it becomes very dicey on how do we handle this thing as an HR. So it's important that we have a proper policy, but of course, proper investigation needs to be done. And if this person is found wanting, proper punishment needs to be implemented. In some cases, you might even want to refer the person to seek justice from the legal system outside of the office in case you don't have a proper policy that addresses this thing. We should not play it down because we don't have a policy. Oh no, sorry, we don't have a policy yet, just forgive him. You are a Christian, your religion preaches forgiveness. It has already happened, forgive him. No. It is God that will forgive the person, yes, but for us human beings, we'll forgive you, but you need to go through the consequences of your action. That does not mean we'll not forgive you. We'll forgive you, but then every action has consequences. That person should go through the consequences of their actions, and then it is left for God to forgive the person and accept them in heaven if they eventually make it there. Okay, so for us, it is a zero tolerance policy, and we should implement it to the best of our capability. I hope that responds to your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. I think it was you who typed this question, Peace Okenkwa.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Peace
Okenkwa.
Yeah, I typed it just like I said. Lunch.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everyone. I guess there are no more questions. Is there anyone raising their hand? You want to make a contribution? Comments? Anyone? Is someone trying to say something?
Okay. So for me, in addition to, you've said a lot. Thank you so much, sir. So for the rest of the HR professional, please, when we are handling this kind of issue, even if the person that is guilty is close to us, you should realize that management had entrusted us with that assignment. And so we need to be very objective. That is where the professionalism comes to play. And remember that your value system, which one of it which has to do with justice, fairness, needs to speak volume at that point in time. So you don't try to sweep the issue under the carpet. You need to face it headlong. Yes, it might cost you your friendship with that person, but it will also make the employees to gain more trust, knowing that you don't take side when it comes to an issue that had gone beyond what it should be. That's just what I needed to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very apt. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the end of this session. Thank you for your time and for your contributions. Yes, is someone trying to say something?
Yes,
Please
I have
go
a
ahead.
question.
Okay,
Okay, in this case, a staff had to report a senior colleague because it has to do with his payment for a job that is rendering services to the company, and whereby his team lead told him, "Oh, do a follow-up on that because I'm indisposed for a time." And because of the case at hand, the person in question missed out on who was actually chatting with him. So because of his advances on this other team lead, he started making these advances to this staff. The staff played along. At some point, everything had to leak out because something came up and he had to tell the team lead, but I informed you on this. And the team lead was like, no, I'm not aware. That was when he now boiled down to, oh, this person I've been chatting with has not been this person. Do you get? So evidences were presented. This boss in quotes had to deny everything, that nothing of such. But this subordinate in question that was chatting, like impersonating this team lead, had to send evidences. And all this was not sent to the HRO and nothing was done. What do you do as this team lead? Because one, impersonation was involved. Secondly, this person is denying that nothing of such happened. So as a person that was being impersonated and everything has not been done, nothing has been done concerning the case, what do you do as a team lead? Thank you, sir.
Okay, if I understand the case properly, a team lead, someone in the team impersonated the team lead and maybe sexually harassing another person, right?
No, the person that was impersonating this team lead didn't know that this boss at the top is making sexual advances on this team lead. Do you get? So why communicating based like he acted like this team lead? This boss now started making advances at the staff, not knowing that he's not the team lead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two cases here. One, there is sexual harassment from the boss at the top, supposedly to the team lead, which eventually was not. And then secondly, there is also a case of impersonation, because you are obviously not the person who this message was meant to, but you played along and claimed to be the person. I guess that's the situation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one, for the team lead, of course, this issue needs to be raised to the HR. Both the person who impersonated and the person who is harassing needs to be called to order, especially if they have a policy around sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. It makes it easy to tackle the guy at the top. But the guy at that level who is impersonating, or the lady or whoever that is impersonating, would probably be tackled through another policy, not sexual exploitation, because that person is only doing a misrepresentation of identity. So we need to be, for me, it borders around the person's integrity, right? So you are not who you claim to be. And that means if you have an opportunity to use my password to access one or two things, you probably would do that. So I think there is a need to do proper investigation. And then based on the facts of the case and the company's policy, proper punishment should be meted to both people. Now, it also boils down, for example, for the guy at the top who is making advances, there is power imbalance. Maybe he's not even aware, but then ignorance of the law is always never an excuse. So maybe he's not aware, but then he needs to be given maybe some sort of warning, perhaps because he has not gone too bad or too physical. Maybe he's just trying to woo the lady, if it's a lady, as the case may be. So depending on what the case would be, HR needs to look at it critically and perhaps address everyone to be in their space. If it means giving like a warning letter to the guy at the top and maybe a sort of punishment to the guy at the bottom, or based on whatever their policies are as regards impersonation or integrity misconduct, then that person should be punished appropriately. So this would be my recommendation. But most importantly, those two people needs to be checked properly. And if they are found wanting and possibly see that there is tendency that they will do this again, or to another part of a person in the organization, then I would recommend maybe putting them out of the workspace, because we don't want anybody that will bring that corrupt behavior in the places where we work. We need to really consider whether they need to be there in the first place and put them away. Find a replacement for them. We'll always find talents. But what we cannot find is integrity. And people without integrity should have no place in places where we work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Franca says,
so
how
much.
do I stop advances of a C-suite executive? A whole lot of discussions. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. I believe, Franca, you are in one of our WhatsApp groups. I hope we can continue the conversation there. But I will give the floor to my mentor to help us answer this question and round up for the evening. Thank you, sir. Please, Franca's question is, how do I stop advances of a C-suite executive? Thank you very much.
Tochuku, I've not gotten advances from a C-suite executive before, so how am I supposed to know how to stop it? All right. Thank you so much, Tochuku, Emeka, Ume, for that wonderful session, and special thanks to everyone who have either commented, dropped a message, asked a question. We sincerely appreciate us all. I would like to say one or two things to attempt to respond to the question as to how to stop the advances of a C-suite executive. First and foremost, when next the issue comes up, politely, professionally, and firmly tell the person that you are not available, you are not interested in that relationship. Also, if there's any, for example, laws or rules or guidelines that forbid, for example, in your organization, relationships, amorous relationships between colleagues, also point that clearly out to reinforce your own personal conviction of lack of interest, because it's your fundamental right to say yes or no. And then if there are policies that also reinforce or even makes it abnormal, also put that into place. Now, check the C-suite. Is there anybody in the C-suite that is professional, mature, and level-headed that you can also take the matter to? For example, so let's say it's the chief marketing officer that is disturbing you. Can you go to the CEO? Let's say it's the CEO. Is the organization the type that has a board or a whistleblowing policy that you can escalate to? Also, people don't usually like this, but sometimes it may make some sense in certain circumstances. Get evidence. Like I've seen one or two instances where people will intentionally press record on their phone so that it is clear when they are telling the person they are not interested, and that person is maybe trying to cajole them and appeal to them or threaten them, as the case may be. Again, you may also now want to like send an email to that person to document to say, they are so. You have brought this to my attention 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I have told you 1, 2, 3, 4 times that I'm not interested and available. I like to formally document my intention, my non-availability and my non-interest. Okay. Most of the time, when people document like that, at that level, maybe you may not need to copy anybody yet. People may even be afraid that, oh, is anybody blind copied in this conversation? Because that means you have shown that you have reached out to the person to formally say no. All right. If possible, to assuming you are not in HR or you're in HR, tell the most senior HR person. All right, so that you have some documentation and evidences. I see Emanuela's hands up. Emanuela, do you want to say something in 30 seconds? All right, no response from Emanuela. So I hope I've been helpful so far. Ladies and gentlemen, we absolutely need to wrap up this session. They just finished the 100 meters dash final. Okay. Manuela, it's like you still want to speak, right? Let me unmute you. I hope you are saying something nobody has said today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to ask, we talk about sexual harassment. I'm just saying, some people actually get to meet their husbands at workplace. How do you deal with that? Does it turn into sexual harassment? I mean, I don't know. Some people genuinely, they have good intentions towards the lady, or maybe the guy over the lady as well. So it could be other ways. How do you deal with that and not tag it as sexual harassment? Thank you.
I will answer you with 3 words. Consent, consent, consent. So in other words, one word mentioned 3 times. Once there is mutual consent, which can be withdrawn at any point, no problem, especially if there's nothing in the rule book of the organization that forbids it. And there are even some organizations that even with mutual consent, one of the parties may need to go to another organization, maybe to avoid breach of conflict of interest, connivance, and fraud, and those kind of risk, you understand, confidentiality. So once it is consensual, I remember I used to work in an organization, one of our security guards from an outsourced firm was, and we are wrapping up with this, okay? Nobody should give any comments after, at least not on this call. We can take the comments out. One of the security guards, okay, I will mention the security company, but it's one of the popular security companies nationwide, was toasting. I don't want to use the word woo now. Tochukwu has been using the word woo. Let me use something different. Toasting one of our managers in HR who happened to be single and actually searching, but according to the HR lady, the security guy was not even in her status, it's not caliber in terms of taste and choice. And this security guard claimed that he sincerely had genuine interest. In fact, some guys went to the security guard, are you looking for sugar mommy? Because beyond title, grade, this lady is obviously financially better off than the lady. Eventually, the HR lady escalated to the head of security, and they redeployed the guy from VI to Badagry. And that was how the affection died in natural death. Mary said he's working with faith. It's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we can go on and on. Again, perhaps this is the only webinar I can use these words. This was a very sexy webinar because from the topic, we dealt with sexual harassment. Thank you for all your romantic contributions and input. We will upload the recording in the next few minutes or hours at the maximum. Tochukwu Emeka Ume, thank you so much. Please come again. I can't forget, the last session you did was on religion. How you move from religion to sex? Only you can explain. Hopefully the next topic will be in between. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's unmute and let's say
thank you, sir.
A unanimous Thank you.
Thank
to
you.
our facilitator.
Thank you, sir. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Go to
We
Budapest.
appreciate.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.